It was a crisp autumn afternoon. The kind of day where the golden leaves swirl in the breeze, painting the ground with shades of orange and amber. Emily, only 6 years old, skipped along the pavement, her pigtails bouncing with each step. The small town of Briarwood was peaceful. A place where everyone seemed to know everyone else. A place where life moved at its own gentle pace. Emily's world was simple, modest. Yes, but full of warmth. She lived with her mother, Rebecca, in a small apartment just outside of town, where they made do with what they had. Rebecca worked 2 jobs, mornings at the local deli, evenings cleaning offices in the center of town. Life wasn't always easy for them, but it was filled with small moments of love and laughter. Rebecca had taught Emily the value of generosity, even when you didn't have much to give. It was a lesson Emily had taken to heart. A lesson that would guide her in a way neither of them could have ever predicted. It was after school on that particular day when Emily's compassion would find its focus in a stranger. A man she had no idea was on the brink of changing her life forever. The day had started like any other, full of the giggles and excitement of a child. Emily had spent the day with her friends, running through the schoolyard, playing hopscotch, and enjoying the carefree nature of youth. But now, as she walked with her mother towards their favorite deli, her attention was elsewhere. The air was chilly, and the clouds rolled in low, casting a soft grey light over the town. Emily's small hand tugged at Rebecca's sleeve. "Mom, can we sit in the park for a while?" she asked, her voice light and filled with the curiosity only a child could possess. Rebecca glanced at her watch. She had a shift at the office soon and had hoped to get home quickly. But then she looked down at Emily's eager face. Those big brown eyes, filled with wonder and unspoken questions, always seemed to soften her resolve. With a sigh, Rebecca smiled. "All right, sweetheart. But just for a little bit." The park was only a short walk away, a quiet place where families strolled, children played, and elderly couples sat on benches, chatting away the afternoon. On that particular day, however, the park was empty except for one person, a man sitting alone on a weathered bench beneath a canopy of golden leaves. Emily, with her curious gaze, couldn't help but stop. There was something about him, something that pulled at her heart in a way she couldn't explain. He wasn't like the others. He wasn't feeding the birds or enjoying the scenery. His posture was hunched, and his head was bowed as if the weight of the world had taken residence there. His face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, oversized sunglasses, and a scarf wrapped tightly around his neck. The thin coat he wore didn't seem to be enough to protect him from the chill in the air, and Emily noticed his hands were trembling slightly, folded on his lap. "Mom, that man looks sad," Emily whispered, tugging at Rebecca's sleeve. Rebecca followed her daughter's gaze. She noticed the same things Emily had, the way the man Saturday isolated and detached from the world around him. She knew that there were always people who struggled, people who were down on their luck. The city was full of them, and Rebecca didn't want to make Emily uncomfortable or put her in an awkward position. "Maybe he's just resting," she suggested gently, hoping Emily would let it go. But Emily couldn't. She had always been the type to notice things that others didn't, to pick up on the subtleties of the world around her. Her heart ached for him, even if she didn't fully understand why. "Can I give him my sandwich?" Emily asked, her voice filled with determination. Rebecca looked down at her daughter, then back at the man. She hesitated. It wasn't that she didn't want Emily to be kind, quite the opposite. But their lives weren't easy, and that sandwich was Emily's favorite. A peanut butter and jelly creation she had looked forward to all afternoon. Money was tight. They had bills to pay, a mortgage to worry about, and sometimes it felt as though kindness was in short supply. Still, Rebecca saw the sincerity in Emily's eyes. The way her daughter's empathy seemed to radiate in a way that was beyond her years. Rebecca sighed softly, her heart warmed by Emily's pure, innocent desire to help. "Go ahead, sweetheart. But be polite." He sure looks like he needs someone to talk to." Without another word, Emily bounded across the street, sandwich in hand, her small feet crunching over the fallen leaves. She had no idea who this man was. No idea that he was someone the whole world had seen on the silver screen. She simply saw a man in need. And in her 6-year-old mind, that was enough to act. The man, absorbed in his thoughts, didn't notice Emily at first. His head was down, lost in a quiet storm of his own. But as she got closer, she took a deep breath, gathering her courage. She had never approached a stranger like this before. But something inside her knew this was the right thing to do. "Hi," she said, her small voice breaking through the rustling leaves. The man looked up slowly, his tired eyes meeting hers through the shadows of his hat and sunglasses. For a moment, he didn't speak. He simply stared, as though trying to figure out if she was real. There was a softness in his gaze, a vulnerability that Emily noticed immediately. "You look hungry," Emily said matter-of-factly, holding out her sandwich. The man blinked, taken aback by the gesture. He had been lost in his own sadness, the weight of his emotions pressing heavily on him. When this little girl, with her simple kindness, pierced through the fog, he stared at her for a moment, unsure of what to say. Then, something inside him shifted. A crack appeared in the walls he had built around his heart. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft, as he accepted the sandwich with both hands. Emily smiled brightly, her mission accomplished. She turned and skipped back to her mother, unaware of the profound impact her small act of kindness had on the man. As she walked away, Jake Turner sat on the bench, the sandwich in his hands, and a tear slipped down his cheek. He had come to this small town to escape the chaos of his life, to find a moment of peace. What he hadn't expected was to find something far more meaningful, a reminder of the humanity he had nearly forgotten. A little girl, a simple sandwich, and the unexpected gift of kindness. It was more than just a small gesture. It was a lifeline. 3 days passed after that fateful afternoon in the park. Life went on for both Emily and the man on the bench. Though for one of them, the encounter had left a mark that would not soon fade. Emily didn't think much about the man she had helped. To her, it was just something she did because it felt right in the moment. She was a child, after all, and the world of adults, with all its complexities, was still a mystery. But that small, seemingly insignificant gesture, a simple act of kindness, had touched someone in a way she couldn't comprehend. For Jake Turner, however, everything had shifted. The world he had retreated from, the world of fame and judgment, was now far from his thoughts. He could still feel the weight of the sandwich in his hands, and the warmth that had radiated from the little girl. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a Hollywood icon, but as a human being. The simple gesture of a stranger, a child no less, had restored something deep within him. Jake hadn't been in the park to meet anyone, and he had never expected his life to change in such a quiet, profound way. His retreat to this small town, far removed from the flashing lights and gossip columns of Hollywood, had been an attempt to escape the pain and loneliness he'd been battling for years. Yet, here he was, feeling something he had long forgotten: connection. As he sat in the small cabin he had rented, he couldn't stop thinking about the girl who had handed him the sandwich. Her innocence, her selflessness, it had all come as a shock to him. She didn't care about who he was or what his life looked like on the outside. She saw someone who needed help, and without a second thought, she acted on it. It wasn't the sandwich that had mattered. It was the thought behind it. It was the kindness that had been offered without any expectation of reward. He had been touched more deeply than he realized. And the more he thought about it, the more he wanted to do something in return. Something meaningful. Jake could have sent a check. That would have been the easiest way to show his gratitude. He had the means. But that didn't feel right. What Emily had given him wasn't something that could be bought or paid back. It was something intangible. Something he could never repay with money. He needed to find another way to show his appreciation. After much thought, Jake decided he would do something unexpected. He would go to Emily's home. He would meet her mother, and thank them properly for reminding him of the beauty of kindness. He knew that this wasn't something he could just send in a gift basket. It was personal. 7 days later, after hours of preparation, Jake found himself standing in front of the small apartment where Emily and her mother lived. His heart raced as he knocked on the door. What if they didn't remember him? What if they were frightened by his sudden appearance? The thought of being a burden, of intruding on their quiet lives, made him hesitate. But as the door opened, he knew he had made the right decision. Rebecca, Emily's mother, opened the door, looking puzzled. Jake's presence there was unexpected. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily, who had been playing in the corner, looked up and froze when she saw him. "Mom, it's the man from the park," Emily exclaimed, her eyes wide with recognition. Jake smiled, his nervousness fading as he knelt down to her level. "Hello, Emily," he said softly. "You probably don't remember me, but I'm the man you gave your sandwich to the other day." Emily's face lit up. "You're Johnny Turner. I saw your picture in a magazine," she said, her voice full of excitement. Jake chuckled, feeling a warmth in his chest at her enthusiasm. "That's me," he said, his smile genuine. "I wanted to thank you for your kindness. You helped me more than you could ever know." He handed her a large basket filled with chocolates and flowers, a small token of his appreciation. Emily's face brightened even further, and she hugged the basket tightly to her chest. "For me?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "All for you," Jake replied. "You reminded me that kindness still exists in the world. You gave me something when I needed it most, and I wanted to make sure you knew how much it meant." Rebecca, still stunned, invited Jake inside. She had known who he was as soon as she opened the door, but she was taken aback by his unexpected visit. It wasn't every day that a Hollywood star showed up on your doorstep, especially not for a simple act of kindness. As Jake entered their small home, the air seemed to shift. It was no longer just about a famous actor, but about a shared humanity. Over cups of chamomile tea, they spoke. Not about the movies or the red carpet, but about life, struggles, and the lessons learned from unexpected moments. Jake explained how, in that park, he had been at his lowest point. The pressures of fame, the endless scrutiny, and the isolation had worn him down. But Emily's small act of kindness had reminded him of something he had almost forgotten, that there was still goodness in the world. "I was losing hope," Jake admitted quietly. "But you, Emily, reminded me that even in the darkest times, there's light." That moment, that sandwich, gave me something I can't put into words. Rebecca smiled faintly, touched by Jake's vulnerability. She had never expected that a simple, humble act from her daughter would lead to something so profound. As they spent the evening talking and laughing, it was clear that this was no longer about a famous actor thanking a child. It was about two people, two families, sharing a moment of connection that transcended the boundaries of fame and fortune. Before he left, Jake handed Emily a signed photograph, and to Rebecca, he offered an envelope with a check inside. "This is just a little something to help the family out," Jake said modestly, his voice filled with sincerity. Rebecca opened the envelope after he left. Her hands trembled as she saw the check inside, one that would pay off their mortgage and secure Emily's future education. It was more than they had ever hoped for. That night, as they sat together, the small act of kindness that had begun with a sandwich had transformed their lives in ways they never could have imagined. Jake, too, had been changed. And though he would return to his whirlwind Hollywood life, he would carry this memory with him forever. Months passed since that unexpected encounter in the park. Life for Emily and Rebecca had taken a surprising turn. What began as a small, unassuming act of kindness had grown into something far bigger, far more profound than they could have imagined. While they never saw Jake Turner again, the ripple effects of that afternoon lingered in their lives, changing them in ways that would leave a lasting impact. For Emily, the little girl who had so simply given a sandwich to a stranger, the lesson of that day stayed with her. It wasn't about fame or wealth, it was about seeing the humanity in others, especially in those who appeared invisible. As she grew older, Emily carried that spirit with her. In school, she was known for her empathy. When a classmate was feeling down, Emily would be the first to offer a smile, a listening ear, or even a small act of kindness. Her friends admired her for it, and though Emily didn't realize it at the time, she was becoming a living example of the power of kindness. Rebecca, too, found her life transformed. With the financial security that Jake's gift had provided, she was able to quit one of her 2 jobs, allowing her to spend more time with Emily. They moved into a slightly larger apartment in a better neighborhood, one that was closer to Emily's school and with more space for both of them. The stress of struggling to make ends meet had eased. But what mattered most to Rebecca was not the material improvements. It was the sense of peace that had settled over their home. There was a newfound sense of stability, both financially and emotionally. However, as much as the gift had provided them with tangible relief, it was the intangible changes that were the most significant. Rebecca now had time to focus on what truly mattered, raising Emily and instilling in her the values of kindness, generosity, and love. She never forgot the impact Jake's visit had made on their family, and every day she reminded Emily that no matter how small or large an act of kindness, it could change lives. Though life had moved on, Rebecca often found herself reflecting on that day in the park. That simple moment had turned into a story that Emily would one day carry with her for the rest of her life. As Emily's mother, Rebecca knew the importance of that lesson, that the smallest gestures, when done with a pure heart, could ripple out and make the world a little better. On Jake's side, the memory of Emily's kindness never faded. He returned to his Hollywood life, of course. But something had shifted. The fame that had once consumed him, the constant desire for validation and attention, no longer held the same power. The world had always seen Jake as a star, someone admired from afar. But in that small town, in that quiet park, he had experienced a moment of raw humanity. He had been reminded that no matter how famous or successful one became, the simple acts of kindness were what truly mattered. The world had become a little less daunting, and Jake had begun to feel a little less alone. He spoke about Emily's kindness in interviews, sharing the story of the sandwich girl with the world. It wasn't about making her famous or elevating his own story, it was about honoring that moment. He wanted people to know that even in the chaos of his life, even with the pressures of fame, there was something beautiful and pure that had touched him. Jake's story had an unexpected effect on others. Fans, strangers, and even people he worked with began to reach out, sharing their own stories of kindness, and telling him how his experience had inspired them to pay it forward. What started as one small act of empathy had rippled out, reaching far beyond the park, beyond that small town, and touching countless lives. But for Emily, none of that mattered. She never sought recognition for what she did. She never understood how her act had reached so many people. To her, it was just something she had done because it felt right. That was the beauty of it. It was not about fame, attention, or reward. It was about seeing a person who needed kindness, and offering it without a second thought. As Emily grew into a young woman, she continued to live by the values her mother had instilled in her. She volunteered at local shelters, helped classmates who struggled with their studies, and worked with community organizations to spread kindness wherever she could. She knew the world wasn't always kind, but she believed that, by doing her part, she could help create a better, more compassionate world. Years later, when Emily became an adult, she found herself thinking back on that autumn day. It was a day that would shape the rest of her life. The moment she had shared with Jake Turner had become the foundation of her values. A reminder that no matter how small, every act of kindness counted. And perhaps, just as that one simple gesture had changed Jake's life, Emily hoped it would ripple out further still, touching more lives and encouraging others to do the same. What Jake never knew, what he would never fully understand, was that his own life had been changed as much by Emily's small gesture as hers had been by his act of generosity. They had shared a moment in time, a moment of true connection that would echo through their lives, carrying with it the lesson that kindness, no matter how small, could be the most powerful force in the world. In the end, it wasn't about a famous actor helping a little girl or a simple sandwich. It was about humanity, connection, and the profound impact that kindness could have in a world that sometimes seemed too caught up in the noise to notice. And that lesson would carry on, generation after generation, reminding us all of the power of love, empathy, and kindness.